Jaguar. Why
Oh
are we
boy.
here and what should we do?
Quick memo before we get into this. I have a quick message to the people at Jaguar that have us in recent years in this position. Y'all earned it.
Oh boy.
Soak in it. This is going to get ugly. To quote St. Anthony Soprano, first of his name, gonna use some bad words. My grandmother had two Jaguars when I was really little. Unfortunately, I don't have any memories of them because I was like probably 2. But I do have the window stickers, and they were apparently beautiful cars. XJ6 Sovereigns, ice blue paint, blue leather. And the thing is, like, she loved her cars. She whenever I brought them up, it was always just smile, sweetest and lights from her. And I'll tell you this: to see what's happened to this company, ugh, this is gonna get bad, guys. This is gonna get bad for me. And I apologize to any family members that are watching this. Sorry for my language because it's gonna get bad.
All right, John. What is your take?
All right. So my take on what I think's going on, what's happened previously. So Jaguar, they're known for really having regal, old school luxury, beautiful interiors, wood grain, performance oriented in some of their models. The Queen was driven around in Jaguar. It's really rooted in British history. And I love them for that. I think they're phenomenal cars. But what I think is the issue is that the younger buyers are just not connecting with that older brand lineage. And you see a lot of people in the comments where they're saying, oh, we've got to, stick with the old school, stick with the heritage. But that obviously wasn't working. And oftentimes what people say they want is not their behavior on what they buy. So they had to make a change. They swung the pendulum all the way in the other direction with this electric concept, which apparently they're still making. We'll see. I'm not sure.
I've heard both that it may not be happening or that it is.
And then I saw a recent spy shot, so I don't know. But I don't think that was the right direction either. What I think they need to do is look at what modern luxury has been redefined as. And modern luxury is really, it's more about community. It's brands like Equinox, things that are clean, things that value customers' time. So they have to work on their product. They have to get more reliable. They have to, and just kind of develop more of that. I don't know. I'm not exactly sure how to pinpoint what they have to do to change, but to me, they had a product problem and a market fit problem. And they have to address both of them, which is a challenging thing to do at this time because they're not selling a lot of cars.
I think.
What do you guys think?
I think one of the big things is Jaguar has, if you look at their history, they've changed their identity over and over and over again. They are a brand that has lacked consistency from their inception. And I think that's where a similar company like Porsche in a similar part of the market has succeeded. They've had consistency to a fault, maybe. People say their cars all look the same from generation to generation, but Porsche has been Porsche, and they've evolved, but it's, over more in recent times, right? Like Porsche, there's always been, a Porsche sports car since Porsche was, created. Whereas Jaguar, I mean, they flip-flopped their brands early on because of the whole SS thing or whatever. Obviously back in the day, that was a problem after the war. But I think then they came out with a smash hit. They had a ton of racing success in the 50s. And that's kind of like the heritage that they lean on. And I mean, man, that was a long time ago now, right? As the boomers are kind of aging more and more, they were kind of the ones in a way that were keeping this market afloat. And, they kind of remembered seeing like races and, Steve McQueen driving around in an XKSS and, or like the E-Type and stuff. Like my dad always talks about, like he got a ride in an E-Type when he was in high school. And he said it was like just an unbelievable experience. But like that was Jaguar's golden era, right? The E-Type was literally like the car that kind of democratized what you got now, like a Ferrari GT car or an Aston Martin GT car. And it just brought it down to like a little bit more of an affordable price point for like middle class or upper middle class people. And then the Datsun Z brought it down even lower than that, but that's a separate story. But you know, the E-Type was the icon, and if it was me back then, like looking in hindsight, they should have held on to the E-Type the way that Porsche held on to the 911. That should have been a steadfast evolution of a car throughout the whole ages. And they didn't really do that. They moved it up to the XJS and stuff, and that was more of like a luxury coupe rather than like a sports car. And it just kind of wish-washed and changed what it was over the years. And I think one of the hard parts for me when I think about like what would I do with Jaguar is, in my mindset, everything I think they should do, they tried in the 20 teens. The new E-Type, that was the F-Type. It's a pretty good car. Looked good.
It is great. Yeah.
Drove good.
Wonderful vehicle.
They kind of did all that, right? They made some really good, enthusiastic product shit. They even came out with manuals again in the V6 F-Type and stuff. And I mean, I think the problem is by the time they did that, like you said, John, the brand equity had sort of eroded for the younger generations. And really only people who are into cars have a respect for Jaguar as a brand. I mean, they haven't really done like a crazy amount of racing since even the early 90s and stuff. I mean, the CX-75 concept that was, you know, like a hybrid and stuff, that was such a wild looking car. I think it was even in one of the James Bond films briefly, but that car would have been a halo that they could have come back on the scene with, but they didn't do it. It was just a concept. They left it there. Could have been a new XJ220 in the early 2010s, but they didn't do it. And I don't know, man. I think they're at a certain point, and I saw when I parked for coffee the other day, there was an E-Pace across the road, the little crossover, and it's just like that car to me is just the Jaguar brand begging to be shot out back. You know what I mean? Like, that is not a Jaguar. That's nobody's idea of a Jaguar. The fact that little car exists just shows that they have totally sold out. They're looking for any port in a storm by now, and that's not how you build it. That's not how you keep a brand built, right?
No,
a brand has to say no to most things. But they also tried the F-Type, and they did a good job with the F-Type, and it still didn't work. So I don't know. Like right now, what would I do? Like, I mean, honestly, I think what they did was a good try. It got people talking, right? It got them in the headlines and people's awareness up. I think, you know, and like, you know, the president of the United States understands any press is good press when you're just trying to be aware of the brand. You know, say what you will, positive or negative, people are always talking about them, and
it got people talking.
That sort of approach. But you know, I think what can they really do at this point? I mean, do I think the answer is a big 2-door EV that's as long as a school bus? Absolutely not. But do I think that could, that design language is bold, right? And it could be a redo for them. I just think, I don't know who they're going to capture, because supposedly that car was going to cost like $250,000 or something. It's not like a car for the people at all. Like they're going like probably, I guess, like up towards like Rolls Royce or something. But they're going EVs. And the high end doesn't really want EVs like that. I mean, Rolls Spectres are not selling that well, you know, and that type of thing. Like, so
Nick,
I don't really know what
they're
doing, but
hang on.
Well, here, hold on. All right, what?
$250,000 Jaguar, with the exception of the XJ220, over the years,
well, that was
they really haven't played in that part of the sandbox when it comes to the auto market with any kind of genuine consistency in some time. I just want to put that out there.
No, yeah, that's true.
It's a problem.
Yeah, I don't know who they think their market is.
You can't bite off. And the thing is, I'm not in marketing. I know that's what you do. But you can't hop into a segment like that at that price point and say, hey, look what we've got for this kind of price. When you've been on the other side of the sandbox for this long and you had a customer base, it was shrinking, but you had one. When you are not building anything for, what was it, over a year? I think it was 2 years. They were building
we're going on
Kiss. And then you go and throw this at us. Here's the thing. And I'm sorry to cut you off, but I'm like begging to talk on this. Jaguar, and Nick, you took the words out of my mouth when you talked about them going back to the dynamism and going back to sporty vehicles in the 2010s. They did do that, and I thought they did a great job with a lot of those cars.
Yeah,
The
that's the thing.
XF was
I can't
wonderful.
fault what they did there. They
The
didn't do
F
anything
was
wrong.
actually driving it in Pennsylvania and really liking it.
They're super
The
fun.
The XE, I did the XE event they did in 2016.
Yeah,
And I thought it was quite nice.
even the SUV, the F Pace was great.
Yeah, I just
Great
said the F
car.
Pace.
Yeah,
I just said the F Pace. I was gonna get to the F Type. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
Even the XK that came out in the mid 2000s, I thought it was a great looking car. I thought they did a really nice job with it. The XK was their first attempt to bring back the E-Type sort of ethos and sort of mystique. Jaguar, and I don't want to talk about the sports cars as much because you really hit the nail on the head with it. Their sedans were the stuff that I always loved as a kid.
mm-hmm.
Because you have these sedans that were sleeker, that were more dynamic looking, that had this sort of feel, this sort of look.
They basically
This
invented the sports sedan in the 50s.
60s, I feel like more. But
50s, yeah, sorry, really late 50s or
Yeah,
early,
we're
into the 60s.
very early 60s.
Yeah.
You're talking about the 3.8.
Yeah.
This was the original S-Type, which,
Yeah.
by the way, if any of you are up on your British history, these cars were very, very popular with a certain type of criminal.
They were.
Specifically, bank jobs, art gallery heists, stuff like that. They were very, very popular. Big trunk. They had a sort of to the point when they were involved in so many chases, the police had to buy them, which I think is awesome. It was a situation where if you can't beat them, join them.
But that was, again, that was the era that made them what they were for our parents' generation.
There was sort of a sinister feel to these cars.
And the good to be bad marketing campaign, right? Remember
it was perfect.
It was great. It was
my God, it was so much fun.
Yeah.
I remember, and by the way, and in case anyone's curious, we are currently recording this during the week leading up to the Super Bowl 60.
That's right.
Jaguar ran those ads, the good to be bad ads, during the Super Bowl a number of years ago. And they got that's an expensive thing to do.
Yeah.
They got attention. I think their sales went up from it. Here's the thing. Tata came in and they saved the brand back in 2008. Because
Jaguar was a lot earlier. That's true.
Jaguar was hemorrhaging money for Ford. It was really, really ugly. They were losing money out their butts. But here's the thing. The XF rescued them from the botched retro job that was the S-Type. The XJ comes out, and they finally get away from the quad headlight look, which I, by the way, liked. I love that look. But they have to modernize. They got away from the XJS kind of look, too. They moved towards a more dynamic look. And if you look at this EV thing they want to do, they want to keep that. Part of that design ethos is still there. I like that. But you can't kill your whole product line and then expect to come back with all these electric vehicles. And I know why they did it. It had to do with Europe, and I get that. But here's the thing. You can't have a brand go dormant for 2 years and not make anything. Delay, and then expect the market to come back to you like Jaguar is probably thinking is going to happen. Now, I know why I know another reason they did it. It's because Land Rover.
If you're trying to totally reinvent your brand, then that's exactly what you do. You have to let the old brand die in people's minds, and then you have to bring it back with a big bang. So
Sure,
I think that's what they were trying to. I think that's what they're trying to do here.
Yeah, but here's the thing: we're now
trying to save the old brand at all. I think they're trying to let the old brand die.
As fair as that might be, it's been 3 years since a new Jaguar has been registered, and that bothers me a little bit. You have to think.
It bothers everybody. Absolutely, it bothers us all.
It's a problem. Sure. It's I start to think of the new Jaguar EV as vaporware, and that's not good. That's real bad.
Well, and especially if it's going to be $250,000. I mean, I don't know who that's for, but
well, interestingly, we're in sort of what some would call a K-shaped economy, where average people are, kind of going down in their buying power, and really rich people are going up. And so I could see how they could want to capture that marketplace of the 250.
But has that marketplace ever won Jag?
Well, we got to remember 250 today was a lot less than 250, 20, 30 years ago. Like it's the equivalent of like 120 20
Yeah,
years.
a lot's changed in terms of inflation, but yeah, I could definitely see how they could kind of go after that kind of marketplace. And I also really think, at least with the initial concept that they came out with, is this was a really masculine brand to begin with. A lot of men
Yes.
was really the, old school Jag
Steve
guy,
McQueen. He
kind of
was
a,
a Steve
yeah, exactly.
McQueen type brand for sure.
A tweed jacket kind of a brand.
Yeah.
And I think they're going the other way towards like Hermes bags and,
Yeah.
more feminine, which
They were
I
trying to do that
could be the
10
right
years
shift.
ago too, though, to be fair.
A little bit.
In a way. It's funny you bring that up because, I don't know, my grandmother had a Jag back in the 1980s and early 1990s, and, she didn't buy masculine products. This Jag was an XJ6 Sovereign, ice blue, blue leather. And sadly, I was at my grandmother's house just last month, and I know we're not going to talk about what we did in cars the last few times, but I was at her house and we were, Katie and I were looking at the photo collages in my grandmother's office, and no car photos, obviously, because why would she keep them? But I was looking for photos of that Jaguar, because the thing is, Jaguar did have appeal, and they're trying to reinvent themselves, but at the same time, careful, guys, because there's always that risk, and I think you're taking that now, where nobody wants your product.
I think that's where it got. When I saw that XE the other day, I was just like, that was how I felt. I'm just like, they've sold out. And it's not cool. The second you sell out like that is the second you've lost your brand equity, right?
You're talking about the
I would have rather them just stuck to it and keep making sporty cars and that. Like, if they just stuck to that, they'd have more brand appeal than.
Nick, hold on a second. You're talking about
the CUV crap. You know what I mean?
You're talking about the XE. That's the series fighter.
Or no, it's the E-Pace. Sorry, the E-Pace.
Yeah, you were talking about the XE a few times. I'm like, hang on a second. No.
The XE is the sedan. That was actually a fun little car.
That was a good car.
Yeah, it was okay. It was
fun.
It was fun. It was definitely fun. I don't know if I would buy it over some of the competition at the time. We drove it.
Yeah, it's an issue.
But no, I'm talking about.
It wasn't a bad car.
Sorry, if I said the XE back then.
Yeah, you're gonna have to go back and fix that.
Yeah, I meant the E-Pace, the small CUV. The F-Pace is great. They did a great job with that. The E-Pace, though, just oh my god.
The E-Pace was I hate to say it, my friend Nick Weiner is probably going to watch and he's going to agree with all three of us here. You remember Nick, and you remember him, John.
Yeah, of course.
The E-Pace, and I hope you agree, is Jaguar's Cimarron moment.
Sure.
You know what I'm talking about? Or no?
It's their Saab 97X.
No, Saab 97X isn't a fair one for me.
Because the
97X was made as Saab's brand was falling apart.
And this wasn't?
The E-Pace is more the Cimarron situation where it was a segment they weren't in before. Okay, maybe it is the 97X.
Okay, it's the same thing.
Yeah, but it's the same idea.
Not in big Tahoe.
A segment you weren't in. A segment you didn't need to be in.
Yeah. And
you entered that segment, and what you did was you tripped, and you didn't just fall on your face. Your arm hit the stand that was to your right. The vase on the stand did one of these.
Here's the thing, though, Al.
Whack, right in your head.
I wouldn't even say all that. I would say it's actually not a bad car. It's just extremely forgettable. It's the worst thing it could be. It made like no impact whatsoever. Bad. It looks boring. It doesn't have the visual appeal that you want from a Jag. Like, here's the thing. I'm not saying they couldn't make any CUV, but like the F-Pace has a visual appeal of a Jag. The E-Pace is this completely forgettable. Like, where's your Macan? You know what I mean? Like, you can do really well. We're about to get the Maserati's small SUV tomorrow, and in hindsight from when this airs, but that makes more of a statement. Why is this little Jag so bland and vanilla and forgettable? That was the biggest problem.
Let me ask you guys this. So they definitely have both a product and a brand problem, but if you were in charge to bring back maybe 3 cars initially under your leadership, what kind of area would they sit at? And what would they be?
So before I answer that with the product question, there's one big thing that we haven't mentioned yet.
Mm-hmm.
the dealer network. They
Yeah.
did not have a big dealer network compared to their competition. And that's one thing is like, so Jaguars are known not to be the most reliable cars, but the same is true with BMW and Mercedes.
Yeah.
With luxury buyers, that's not the end of the
They're
world.
worse.
It's not the end of the world, but if the nearest Jaguar dealer is twice as far away as the nearest BMW dealer or Mercedes dealer, you're not buying a Jag because it's not convenient.
Yeah.
So the dealer network, they just didn't have a big enough dealer network. And I think that really,
That was
really
a
hurt them
problem
because
with them
even
for a
when
really
their
long
product
time.
mix was really good, that removes the convenience of owning one for a lot of
They
You know
they
what I
have
mean?
to address the kind of reputation they have for poor reliability. Al, I'll kind of disagree with you a little bit on some of their reliability. I think they've gotten a lot better, especially like the 5-liter V8s, the supercharger, the V6 with the
They
supercharger.
did. I would
It's
say you're right
outstanding.
about that.
I think people kind of still
But
think
their
about those
reputation,
cars from the
unfortunately,
early,
was
like the
so
early,
bad.
like the 70s, the V12 cars. They were a nightmare. They really
Yeah.
were.
That's
And I think they share no parts right now with the new ones, and
No,
so
they
people
don't, but-
they still are kind of connected to that negative sentiment. So
They
definitely
that
have to address
reputation
that.
has been very, very hard to shake. And the reputation for that sadly goes back to the era of British Leyland. Because here's the thing, Jaguar was not part of BL. I want to make that very, very clear. But because they were a British car brand, they did share suppliers, which was one of the biggest problems that a lot of these companies had. And I think you guys know exactly which company I'm about to bring up. It's Lucas. I saw a T-shirt at a car show earlier this year or last year that I still think is really funny, and I want one. That said, "Lucas, better get home before sunset." And here's the thing: they're not joking.
Yeah.
Lucas made some absolutely awful products, and they sadly weaseled their way into a lot of Jaguars. The V12s were known for overheating a lot. The inline sixes had problems with oil. A lot of them burn oil. They do leak. They all have wiring faults. Jaguars were not known for the best build quality, and that's what hurt them compared to like in the 1990s. If you bought a Mercedes S-Class, you could probably count on that thing lasting 15 years, maybe 20. If you bought a Mercedes in the 80s, like my grandparents did, that thing spotted oil constantly. But every single time my grandmother got in and turned the key, or my grandfather got in and turned the key, the thing started, and it ran fine. It just, dripped oil, like some cars would. Jaguar had bigger issues, and those issues were bad enough that it became the butt of jokes on late night TV for a long, long time. Probably, I might be speculating here. I bet you Howard Stern made jokes about it on his radio show back when he was on FM radio back in the day, until he went to satellite. Probably still down on satellite. The reputation just kept hitting them like a ton of bricks. So the first thing you do is you have to chase after a JD Power Award, in my opinion, because
they need to
even
show their
though
qualities up.
it
That's the
doesn't
big thing.
have the pull with us enthusiasts that it should, with the general public, that's the kind of thing that gets their attention really quickly. I remember Lexus was always touting this. I think Ford would tout it. GM, when they won it, would tout it. Chrysler, once in a blue, when they won it, they would tout it. It's no joke. That's a big marketing thing. That's one of those things they need.
Yeah,
You got to
also
shake. That's the first thing you shake.
I think the best thing for them to do too is to just put their money where their mouth is and put a serious warranty behind their new cars. I think
100%.
that's what Kia did
did
to sort of gain market share against Toyota. They did the 10-year 100,000. I don't know. They could do the same thing.
So I think that they should do product mix wise. Let's talk about this. I think that, and again, I guess what I'm sort of my approach is sort of how do we resurrect the Jaguar that we all know and love. I'm not really trying to reinvent the brand. I'm saying how do we resurrect them? Al, everything you just said has to happen, right? The quality, they need to invest in their quality, and then they need to stand behind their product. Absolutely. But three products to make it work. I think you need a car between the Boxster and the 911 that has the practicality that the F-Type never did. Because that was one of the biggest problems with the F-Type was It was sort of big and sort of heavy for what it was as a roadster, but it also was about as practical as a Miata with the storage space that it had. So it wasn't great in that regard. So what they need is they need a car that's not as big as the XK, but maybe between the F-Type and the XK with a back seat that's sort of usable for small trips, but mostly for storage, right? It does. It needs that because it has to compete with the 911 now. That's the thing that nobody messes with the 911 is on the versatility of the car. They need to take 911.
Okay, I'll give you that one.
Right? They need to be able to take 911 sales. So it has to be between a Boxster and a 911, basically. And they need to price it there, right? We're not talking, the 911s are now starting like 130, 140K. So this is a car that I want to see starting price in the 90s, right? And probably go up to like 120 or so, give or take. Maybe a little bit more if you have a bigger engine or something like that. But it shouldn't, again, the spread should aim to stay under 150. Probably like 90 to 150 with the spread with different engines. A V8 would be great. I think the 6-cylinder should be the core, right? Again, go back to sort of, take the lane that they took for the V6 F-Type was a good lane. Manual transmission, decent automatic. They had that right. You know what I mean? And then manual with the V8. Duh. Stop. All these companies need to stop only putting manuals in the entry-level car. People want it in the big one. Do that.
These idiots treat it as a loss leader.
Yeah, I mean, it's so stupid. But we don't need to go down that rabbit hole either. But
Jaguar even did it.
So
it's dumb.
I think you pin your brand to that car. Make a new E-Type that is between the Boxster and the 911. You pin it to that. You have your quality. I think the F-Pace as an SUV, great car. Bring that back, in new form, whatever. That's a fantastic car. And you see a fair amount of them around. Do what you got to do to make it priced competitively, I think. But that thing, not too many notes on that thing. Now the last one, the question, do you go with an EV? Do you make a sexy EV? That's the question. I don't know. In this market, and I haven't actually decided yet on whether I think they should do it or not. But I don't know. I mean, we're all saying no, but people buy them. And here's the thing: they need a like a Porsche's equivalent of a Cayenne, which which is what we're talking about with the F-Pace. But
I have a better solution than
Porsche
that,
sold a lot of Taycans, dude. Porsche has sold a lot of Taycans, and they're selling a decent amount of Macan EVs as well. So when it comes to paying your bills, sometimes you got to make a model like that. Now, what do you do there? I mean, I guess that's the question for the class is, first off, do we all agree on the E-Type sort of successor and the F-Pace? Because I think the market for SUVs.
I kind of like the price point you're at, but I was almost initially thinking like an M3 competitor that you could make it a convertible, a sedan, and a wagon version. I think that'd be kind of interesting, especially if you had a manual transmission option.
Interesting. So okay. Interesting. Yeah, actually, that price range, that would be in that. Yeah, that'd be in that. That's an interesting idea.
Because I don't know, you could kind of dress it up or down. You could make it kind of crazy, more with that kind of M3 competition with the same platform, or you could kind of compete.
Well, Jaguar did do
Audi A4 and
Jaguar did do, and they did what, the Project 8, I think
Project 8,
which was
that was
cool. It was like $180,000 M3 rival.
They sold
like a handful of them. They're super cool, but they were
very limited. I think they made
super
like
limited production.
They're very
really
rare.
Another
I'm with you. I think that's an interesting idea.
Yeah, because you could use that platform for multiple kind of.
I just think Jaguar. I will say, like, we saw that show, and the guy pulls up in the E-Type, and I'm like, Jaguar needs a style icon again, and I think that's what the brand was based around for so long, and they need that back. And so that was why I said like an E-Type success. I think from a practicality standpoint, I think you're right, but I think they need that. If they did that, I think they need a halo car then, like a supercar, Mercedes SLS type thing, but Jaguar.
That's kind of how I was positioning them. So it would be something that is just totally wild.
Yeah.
No electrics. I would view them as, try to position yourself as an enthusiast brand.
Yeah.
Bring back the manual, naturally aspirated, Yeah, go kind of more analog and do things people are afraid to do. So if you came out with a limited production V12, something with a manual transmission that is a ton of money, but maybe not, not Zonda money, not,
V12 GT.
not,
So
yeah.
here's the thing: they would not be able to sell these cars in the EU. That's the hurdle. Is you're foregoing the entire European market
It's a big market
by making these types of cars. But you have all of America, which is the biggest market for these cars in the world. Still, you have the Habibis, who always love a good loud engine that uses gas that they have in the ground.
Yeah.
You have certain Asian markets and whatnot. You have there's a lot of other markets than the EU. So that's a good question.
The other car I think they could really knock out of the park, and I don't know if I'd recommend it for the first 3 cars that they would make, but they could really knock like a Lincoln Navigator competitor or a Cadillac Escalade competitor. Just go with like road presence. You know what I mean? Really bring it that road presence.
Like some real.
That's a good idea, considering that's kind of where that's actually where the old school American full-size vehicle has shifted to.
Exactly.
Yeah, it is.
It has shifted towards that. And I don't want to go into the weeds on this because you guys know I will do that. In fact, I'm a pro at it.
We know.
Freaking professional at this kind of thing. I'm a surgeon.
But could you imagine like a really beautiful, again, they have to kind of change their design language, but I could just imagine the road presence that a car like that from Jag would have. Incredible interior, and a cool engine.
I think whatever they do,
still alive, they would buy
whatever Jaguar does with this, it has to be stunning visually.
Yeah.
It can't walk softly in the world. They have to be bold. And the biggest thing with me when I saw that E-Pace was just like, this is a car that is trying to please everybody and thrills no one. You know what I mean? It should be, these need to be cars that turn heads. And you don't have to love it. And I guess that is, they did do that with the concept car, right?
Yeah.
This is the car. If you saw a pink one or whatever go by, like,
sure.
Like, huh? Like, it is going to turn heads. So they haven't done everything wrong. I just think that the big expensive EV thing is just already played out. And I think the market's already moving away from it. To be honest, I think the legislation is starting to change, and I think it's only going to change more because, look, nobody really, especially in the luxury market, like people just don't seem to want this stuff. At least not like as their main thing. Maybe as like, one little daily driver. But, I don't think anybody wants the car that they're making. So
do you think they could do like an elevated Miata competitor?
I thought about that. I think the hard part with that is that the economies of scale required to make a car like that at that price point,
it would get too high.
It would be too expensive for them. Maybe down the line, but I think right away they need cars they can make money on per unit, right? Because they're not very big. They don't have a huge amount of resources.
Yeah.
And the other question I was always wondering back in the day was like, as good as the F-Pace was, I was like, they're in with Land Rover. Like, why are they even bothering with SUVs?
Yeah,
the market demanded it. That's the problem.
Well,
there were probably people
that's why we're here, though. That's why we're here.
Wanted a Jaguar SUV. I mean? They said, "I don't want a Land Rover. I want a Jag."
And not that many people said that.
I don't know. You have not
that many people actually said that, and that's why we're where we're at right now.
They just didn't differentiate.
Jaguar stretched. So then the truth is, Jaguar stretched themselves too thin.
That's what I'm saying. I think they eroded the brand when they did that. And again, as good as the F-Pace is, and they made it the V8 one, that's a proper Jag. But I gotta kind of wonder, is like, they're in bed with Land Rover, obviously, and it's like they probably should have just left the SUVs to Land Rover and made Jags and focus on the enthusiasts, focus on
it wouldn't be the only
making them themselves like I guess like sort of Alfa Romeo in a way, like focusing on enthusiasts. But even Alfa Romeo like now is kind of doing the same thing. They're like washing themselves out a little bit. Like, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, the enthusiasts are only so big of a market. But I think if they were to come back, that would be the big things. Like, try to expand the dealer network or at least the service network. Quality would have to be, the utmost. They got to stand behind their product, even if they're even if they're going to lose some money at first, they need to do it to get their reputation back. And then you got to make some cars that really make a statement at every level that you're making cars at.
Yeah. Speaking of the dealership network, if I were them and I could just axe things, I would go direct to consumer. I would just go for it, sell those large dealership assets, and then create smaller service centers.
Yeah, they just need service centers everywhere.
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah,
I would love to see them do that. I
Yeah.
mean, here's the thing: you teach
That's a
more
good
independent
point, John.
shops. Now, how would I save the brand product wise? Because Nick, you answered that question. I want to answer that too.
Yes.
I think John, you answered it yourself as well. So I was waiting. I didn't know what I was saying, but now I've kind of got an idea. First things first, bring back the E-Type. Just call it the. First of all, stop messing around with the names.
Yeah.
Call it the E-Type, and
They should have done that all along since the E-Type.
do it the way that they did it in the 60s. You offer a roadster, you offer a hardtop, and you offer a 2+2. Offer all three versions. They screwed the pooch when they did the F-Type with that because it was only a 2.0. Nick, you are right about that. I'm a change man on that one. And price it less than the 911 because that's actually easy to do because 911
now that's easy.
structure has gone completely out the window at this point.
They're going.
In fact, I'd actually try to steal customers from GM. I'd price it close to the bet. I would see if you could steal some of that.
GM has the economies of scale that Jaguar can't even begin to imagine right now.
That's true. But at the same time, maybe you wait and you bring this back in a few years. You do a staged approach. You don't bring everything back at once. Because you want to build, kind of do what Tesla did back in the day.
I think they need a Halo car like that
to
bring the brand back, though, man. They need something that
they do.
They need a reason for people to be excited.
But that doesn't have to be the Halo.
Man.
I think you could also do maybe, call me crazy, they have never done a follow-up to the XJ220, and that car has become legendary over the years.
That's what I'm saying.
That could do it.
Bring up a supercar.
Well, that was the CX-75 that I mentioned. They had the chance, and they had the concept, and they almost
and they never did it.
Didn't do it. Yeah,
do it.
Ugh.
Just knock everyone's socks off.
Yeah,
because if you do that, and you make it gas powered. None of this electric garbage. You will get the hoi polloi back immediately. All the buff books, all the magazine people are going to go crazy. They're going to cream their spinach over it. I'll cream my spinach over it, for God's sakes. And I don't like spinach. It's not a bad way to go. Let's be honest. This could work. Next thing you do, leave the SUV stuff to the to Land Rover. Leave it because they do fine with it. And in fact, there was actually a good period of time where Land Rover was making so much money, it was actually propping Jaguar up.
That pretty much is current.
It's what's been going on probably since 2013.
Yeah, pretty much it.
Bring the XJ back, okay? Bring back my favorite. I want the XJ back.
I hate to say it, but I think that's where that Escalade comes in, man.
No.
Yeah.
Make it give it an EV version, but make it limited. Make it special order. And
too many cars, man. I don't know.
I was gonna say I don't think there's a market for that, man. The market for the big sedans like that is all going to the SUVs.
Yeah,
why do you think the Cullinan exists?
The Lexus, they just said they're not making the LS anymore. I mean,
I'm aware of that. Mercedes is still doing the S Class.
The S Class will be the last one left. The S Class will be the last one left.
Here's the thing, though. One of the reasons why sedans have been going away has also been because of the EPA. A lot of those regulations got rolled back. The market could actually come back.
We'll see.
Give it time. I think it could come back. Remember,
I think a lot of the luxury market that's going to ride in the back of the car, though. There's, like I said, there's a reason the Cullinan exists, and there's a reason why they're selling so well for relative to what they are. An SUV, if you're being driven around, an SUV is just more spacious and more comfortable.
As true as that is, I seem to remember a lot of people that buying XJs back in the day, they were owner driven. They were not chauffeur vehicles. So again, this is my, this is me here. This is me we're talking about here.
Just poking holes in it,
Yeah, well, you love to do that. That's your thing.
I do.
Yeah, talking about, and me interrupting you. Hello.
Yeah, you want your XJ back. I get it.
I do want my XJ back. Thank you. Offer gas and electric versions of it. Because here's the thing, the Lucid Air is still floating around. And Tesla's only dumping the Model S because of other reasons. It's not because it isn't selling. It's because there's other reasons they want to get rid of it.
Yeah.
So there's a market for the XJ. It's going to be there. Chase after it. Maybe make a coupe version too, like they had in the 70s. because that's a pretty thing. If you guys have ever seen an XJ Coupe from the late 70s, it's a very pretty car.
Yeah, then we can resurrect all of the what is it, with the generation above the boomers, and we'll just resurrect all of them, and then there'll be a market for it.
Oh, stop it!
I love the XJ as much as the next guy, but it wouldn't be my first three. You know, if I was really working on just 3 cars to launch with.
Here's the thing: I think the SUV market for them, as good as it's been, and the F-Pace is a great truck. I really like them. At the same time, the F-Pace, remember, they're owned by Tata here. You're dealing with internal competition. That's a problem.
What about like a rebadged Defender?
That was sort of what the F-Pace was, a rebadged Velar. So like it was kind of already that approach.
I like the Velar.
I like the Velar too. Big fan.
How was a rental in Denver?
Yeah, that whole platform was good. No, that's what I mean. They did a lot right in the 2010s.
Yeah.
It just, I think if they had a better dealer network and a better reputation for quality with what they did in the 2010s product wise,
it might still be around.
They wouldn't be in this problem. They wouldn't be in this situation. So I think that probably ties up Jaguar.